On this episode, we go back in time to learn about an almost tragedy that would have destroyed central Bangkok.
So if you feel like a peek behind the terrifying curtain of what could have been, you'll dig this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to crossbreed a maple tree with a rubber tree to create car tires that smell like pancakes.
That's genius, dude. Genius.
It is. It's almost there.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 23 years ago. Fell in love with Thai swear words, but I still haven't figured out how to properly use them, so I never left.
Any bloody day.
It's not easy to use profanity correctly, dude. You got to be careful with profanity.
It really depends where you are as well. Like, fanny pack in Canada is something totally different in the UK.
Oh, is that correct? I didn't know that. I better be careful.
Fanny has a very different meaning in the two different countries.
Okay. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get every episode a day early, behind-the-scenes photos of our interviews, a heads up to send questions to upcoming guests, and access to our Discord server to chat with me, Greg, and other listeners around the world. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and Bangkok topics. On this week's bonus show, we chatted about our recent epic Northern Thai lunch with former guest Pai Lin from Hot Thai Kitchen, Greg's visit to the hospital that saw him getting scammed by the old overpriced medicine routine like some sad noob, and the challenges of teaching American culture and ways of thinking to Thai freshmen who might actually have benefited from another year in high school. To learn how to become a patron, click the support button at the top of our website.
As someone who could probably benefit from another year in high school himself, I feel his pain. That's right. And everyone, hey, don't forget our meetup happening just a few days after this episode drops on Friday, September 29th at Pallet Bar on Charon Krung Road, right by Sapantax and BTS. All the details on Facebook. And don't forget, if you listen to us on Spotify, you can now hear all the bonus shows there as well. If you're a patron, simply link your Patreon account to your Spotify account and add our new feed titled Bangkok Podcast, Badass Patrons Only, to hear the regular and bonus shows in the same place. Pretty cool stuff.
Sounds cool to me.
All right, on this episode, we are looking in the rear view for another in the series of little-known Bangkok history episodes, and this one is a doozy. Now, those who have been here a while might remember the 2015 bombing of the Erawan Shrine, which was a pretty terrible blemish on Bangkok's relatively safe reputation. Those here even longer might remember the grenade in garbage can attacks from 2010, which is part of the reason why it's so bloody hard to find a garbage can here sometimes. But in 1994, Bangkok came very, very close to being the victim of an attack that would have made even the Erawan blast look like a grade school firecracker in comparison, and it was just pure luck, plus the sheer pluckiness of Bangkok's legendary motorcycle taxi drivers that averted what could have been a disaster of staggering proportions. Now, Ed, I remember reading this story years and years ago, and I've always found it very, very interesting, but you and I were talking, and you said that you don't know a lot about this, and I think there's probably a lot of people out there in the same boat. It's not really well known, I don't think.
That's right. So I have heard about this very vaguely, but I don't know the details, so this is going to be an educational experience for me.
Edumacational, that's great. That's why we're here. Part of it, edumacation and entertainment. So I'm going to go through the what happened, the story, and let's just see what almost happened. So picture it, Friday, March 11th, 1994, 9 a.m. We're outside of Central Chidlom at the corner of Soi Chidlom and Plunchit Road. The area is packed with street food vendors serving the crowds of people as they make their way to work, many of them going to or coming from Chidlom BTS station, which sits right above the intersection. Buses and tuk-tuks drop people off, as well as motorbike taxis who are waiting to zip people in between the rows of cars at traffic lights. If you had the radio on, listening to any Western music, you'd probably hear Boys to Men, Ace of Base, or Always by Bon Jovi. Great
Wow.
song, one of my old favorites.
Ace of Base. That's a callback.
They saw the sign. So one motorbike driven by a skinny 21-year-old named Boonsern had just dropped off his passenger at the drop-off zone on Chidlom Road in front of the department store and was waiting to see what the next fare would be. Now, this intersection is kind of dangerous, Ed. Actually, I used to work with a guy at Agoda years ago who was actually hit by a bus and died at this intersection.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's pretty dangerous because there's four lanes of traffic. The like 2 lanes on one side going one way, 1 lane on the other side going the same way, and then the 4th lane going the opposite direction, which is for buses.
Oh, that is the worst. Yeah, no, I think we've mentioned this before in the show. Sukhumvit is very weird, where the direction that the lanes go, they don't necessarily track kind of the geography of the street.
Right?
Where you cross a lane going left, you cross a lane going right. There might be another lane going left, after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's a very busy intersection, and it's a little bit dangerous too. And also, as I'm talking about this, something just jumped into my head. You remember, God, what was it, 5 years ago? They had that massive tree right outside of Central Chidlom that fell over.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
And killed that woman on a motorbike. Maybe this intersection is cursed. I don't know. But
right. Sure.
It's a crazy place. So we have Kun Boonsern, who has just dropped off his passenger. And at the same time that Boonsern was dropping his passenger off, a cube truck, the type that you can hire to move stuff, like a U-Haul truck,
sure.
The big ones that you
sure.
stuff your furniture in. A big U-Haul truck emerged out of the Central Chidlom parking lot. It had been parked there the night previously, but was picked up that morning. When it emerged from the parking garage, it turned left on Chidlom Road, but the driver, perhaps unused to driving such a large truck in the constricted Bangkok streets, turned too sharply, the rear wheels going right over Boonsern's bike.
Ouch.
Yeah. Now, luckily, Boonsern jumped away when he saw that the truck would hit him, but his bike was crunched under the heavy wheels, so poor Boonsern lost his bike that morning. However, the driver, either oblivious to the mess he had just made or not caring and just wanting to drive on, which is what many people do who get in accidents in Thailand. They just try to get away.
Sure.
So the driver just kept on driving. But we all know that motorbike taxi drivers stick together, and the truck didn't get more than 20 meters before it was surrounded by a group of drivers who made the truck stop.
That sounds about right. That's a very motorbike culture thing.
Yeah.
It's too bad that most motorbike guys don't speak English, because if we could get a representative motorbike guy, it would be great to talk about them about Thai motorbike subculture. So listeners out there, if you come across the 1 in a million Thai motorbike guy who's got excellent English, ask him to give us a call. We'd like to talk to him.
I would love to sit down for a long chat with that guy. It was fascinating.
No,
it's so funny because all their wins are competitive, right? Like you can't stop here, you can't stop there. But when push comes to shove, they're all part of the same little subculture family. So
For sure.
They got each other's backs.
For sure.
So the truck tried to drive away, but he didn't get too far before he was surrounded by motorcycle drivers, probably screaming at him, "Hey, you stop. You ran over the bike. What are you doing? Where are you going?" So, knowing that he had to address the situation, the driver got out of the truck. He was a foreigner and so didn't speak Thai, but he offered Boonsern, who by this time was pointing back to his mangled motorcycle, 3 green bills, probably US dollars. But knowing this wasn't going to cut it, Boonsern refused and told the driver to accompany him back to the motorbike where he could discuss what was going to happen. Using the international language of signing with your hands, the driver said he had to make a call first. So the motorcycle drivers, for some reason, I'm not sure why, let him go. The guy walked in to use a payphone inside Central Chidlom and disappeared, never to be seen again.
Oh, wild. Okay. So at the time, it would just seem as if he's trying to get away with paying for the mangled motorbike, but you're basically saying he abandoned the truck.
Yeah. He just went into Chidlom. I got to make a phone call because this is before cell phones, obviously, right? So he had to go and find a payphone inside the mall, and he walked in and he never came out. So he was gone.
Interesting. I've never heard the story before. Interesting.
Yeah. So by this time, people had moved on. The mangled bike had been moved off the road and the area had returned to normal. And the police were there now. And after taking notes and talking to everyone who witnessed the accident, they drove the now abandoned truck to Lumpini Police Station right across from Lumpini Park.
Sure.
Wasn't that the place where you busted in, where you had to have a bathroom emergency? And you
Okay, thanks for bringing that up, but it is true. That is the police station where I had my bathroom emergency.
we did a whole show on that. It was a previous show about embarrassing Bangkok moments, but just. But anyway, right across from Lumpini Park, the Lumpini police station is quite well known. So poor Boonsern went there to give his statement to police, and they parked the truck while they got to the bottom of the accident. 5 days later, the woman who owned the company that rented the truck arrived at the station to help the police sort things out. So she said that she had rented the truck to someone, but because he didn't have the right paperwork, she agreed that he could take it if one of her employees, Mr. Tila, drove the truck, but had not heard back from Mr. Tila after he had left 5 days previously.
Weird.
So when the police took her outside to look at the truck, she immediately noticed that it had been modified. A dark film had been added to the driver's side window, and the chassis had been modified with extra springs to support extra weight, which sounds suspicious to me.
Weird. This is a very weird story.
Yeah. So when they opened the back door of the truck, they saw a large object in the middle of the cube covered with a tarp. And when that was thrown back, they were overpowered by the smell of diesel fuel as well as something rotting. At this point, they knew that something was very, very wrong and officially brought in some specialists to examine the cargo.
Crazy. Okay, this is a pretty crazy story.
Yeah, it reads like a detective novel, right? Like,
Heck yeah.
Oh my God. So what they found once they pulled the tarp back was a huge water tank. You know the type you find. You've been to like the big hardware stores. The type you find.
Sure.
You bury them in the ground and you use them for water tanks or septic tanks or something like
Sure.
that. Yeah, these giant plastic tubs. At its base was 2 containers of oil and a battery, but that wasn't the half of it. When they opened the top of the tank, they finally saw the big picture. And it was ugly. The 1,600-liter tank was filled with a mixture of diesel fuel and ammonium nitrate fertilizer.
Damn, that's a bad sign. Fertilizer is a bad sign to see in large quantities.
Yeah, no doubt. Just below the surface of the gooey mix, they found 14 metal tubes stuffed with a total of 4 kilograms of C4 explosives.
Damn.
And finally, they found wires leading from the contraption in the back to a switch that had been installed underneath the driver's seat. So if it's not clear at this point what they had accidentally stumbled upon, it was a massive truck bomb. And it was pure luck that the policeman who drove the truck from Chidlom to Lumpini didn't accidentally hit the switch or see it and wonder what it did.
Dear Lord, what a nightmare. I mean, this is, it's pretty incredible. It's funny. I was only very vaguely aware of this. This is a pretty incredible story.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. These fertilizer bombs it's kind of the classic, I don't want to say it's not low rent, but I think it's probably relatively inexpensive compared to other types of bombs. But this is how people who want to do a lot of damage do it without, if you don't have $1 million, if you've got, let's say, $5,000 and you want to blow something big up, you figure this stuff out, or you do research and you realize, okay, I need fertilizer, I need this, I need that. And you can actually construct a fairly powerful bomb without a lot of money.
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, the big thing going around was the Anarchist Cookbook.
Right, sure,
which was sort of like,
of course,
it had a lot of how to make thermite and how to make explosives.
Absolutely, sure.
It was shocking the types of things you could make with stuff you find in your bathroom cabinet.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and of course, Ed, you nailed it. If you don't remember, this was roughly the same set of materials that was used in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, a year previous to this, and that would also be used by Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma City bombing almost exactly 1 year later, 1995. So definitely serious stuff.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. But the grim discoveries didn't stop there. Once the bomb was disarmed and disassembled, the police found one more surprise inside the tank, the decomposing body of Mr. Tila, the employee who had gone with the truck renter to drive the truck.
Oh, wow. Okay. So this is a super creepy thing. And so now I really want to know how it ends, if they ever figured out what the purpose of the bomb was. So I don't know the end of the story.
Well, we're getting there. Unfortunately for Mr. Tila, he had both of his arms broken and had been strangled. So
Jesus, brutal.
These guys were Brutal guys. And at this point, unsurprisingly, the big guns stepped in. The Thai military and government intelligence services,
Sure.
along with Israeli and American counterterrorism agents.
Damn.
You see, given the location of the bomb was stopped at, it was theorized that the final destination was going to be either the U.S. Embassy on Wireless Road or the Israeli Embassy, which at that time was on Soy Langsuan.
I guess that's not a crazy assumption, but who knows?
Yeah, now I think I did some further reading on this, and I think in the years after this, there was actually attacks on Israeli embassy properties and government properties in South America and Europe as well.
Sure.
So I think this was sort of like fit the pattern. But actually directly related to this, after all this went down, or thankfully didn't go down, the Israeli embassy actually moved from Langsuan to a more secure location.
Gotcha.
In an office building. Yeah, so at this point, the story became instant front page news, as you can imagine, and Kun Boonsern, the motorcycle driver, became a bit of a hero for foiling the plot, even if it was an unexpected accident. So experts said that if the bomb had gone off, it would have caused a catastrophic explosion that would have obliterated anything nearby and caused extensive damage to anything or anyone with a 2-kilometer radius of the bomb.
Damn.
It's crazy. I went to Google Maps and just for some geography on that, and using Central Chidlom as the epicenter, that's roughly a blast radius north-ish to the Victory Monument,
Oh, wow.
east to Asok Road, south to Rama 4, and west all the way over to MBK.
That's insane. No, that's completely insane.
Massive. That would have been it would have brought Bangkok to its knees. But after a few weeks, the furor died down and everyone moved on to the next story. But our friends at the Thai police force were still working. You know, like I was saying to someone the other day, we're always looking for good police stories, good Thai police stories, and these guys did their job.
For sure.
Yeah. So 2 months later, in May 1994, they finally got their suspects and issued arrest warrants for 2 Iranian suspects. One was caught in the southern town of Hat Yai, while the other one had already fled the country. Now, despite pleading not guilty, the guy they caught in Hat Yai, he was sentenced to death, but the sentence was overturned because it could not be proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he was the driver of the truck. So he spent 4 years in prison, but in 1998, he was released and disappeared into the ether.
Wow. Okay. I mean, I've got a lot of questions, or you know, it sounds like a lot of the questions are unresolved. So the best possible theory, although it's just a theory, is that maybe some Iranians who were anti-Israel, so that seems to be maybe the working theory, that this was destined for the Israeli embassy. It's fascinating that they choose a place like Bangkok. So obviously there are Israeli embassies around the world. So I guess if you want to attack something Israeli, but you don't want to go to Israel, you could just pick a country, I guess.
Right. Yeah. I think Bangkok is a strategic target too. It's got some of the American embassy is the biggest one in the region. It's a transport hub. It's a government hub. It's a financial hub. So
Sure.
yeah. But I think you're right though. There's that's basically the end of the story. It had a bit of an unresolved ending because no one was ultimately punished. Nothing really bad happened, which was great. But it just kind of went away.
You know, to me, it's still a great story because it shows you how weird the world is and what could have happened and what we somehow managed to avoid. Like, it sounds like this would have been a massive explosion.
Yeah.
That it clearly would have done a lot more damage than just to the Israeli embassy. So it's just by a complete stroke of luck that this truck happened to get involved in this accident.
Yeah.
You know what? Okay, this is a bit of a non sequitur, but have you ever seen the movie The Pledge?
No.
Yeah, it's starring Jack Nicholson, and it's I don't want to give. I guess I'm going to give too much away. So, okay, spoiler alert for the movie The Pledge. Spoiler alert. But it's basically about a cop who, played by Jack Nicholson, who's convinced there's kind of a serial killer or a killer on the loose, but he doesn't have good evidence of it. And throughout the movie, it's a little bit unclear whether he's just getting old and paranoid, or whether there really is a killer. But spoiler alert, there actually is really a killer, but on the way to the ultimate confrontation, he gets in a car accident and dies. so at the end of the movie, it looks like Jack Nicholson was a crazy man who was paranoid because the killer never shows up and nothing ever happens. And he's been ranting and raving about, you got to be careful. There's a guy out there. But the truth is there was a guy out there, but he ends up just dying in a car accident. So the Jack Nicholson character basically goes crazy because he doesn't know that he was right.
Oh man!
So this reminds me of that, where this is a what you could call an almost story, like an almost bad thing happened, but it didn't. So you can just imagine someone who was predicting, we got to be really careful, there's going to be an attack on the embassy, whatever, and then it just never happens, and so that guy now looks like a loon.
That's interesting. Interesting.
But actually, he was right. Like there was almost, an attack on the embassy.
Well, it's funny because I did a whole bunch of searching on this, and there's not a lot of this online. There's no photos that I could find. There's one story in Big Chili, which covers it all pretty well. And there's a couple of sort of security camera photos of the suspects. But there's no photos. There's a couple of write-ups here and there. But even, you remember the 1990 explosion, the gas explosion on New Petbury Road?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Killed like 90 people. There's tons of photos on that online, but for this one,
well, it's an almost story. I mean, this is kind of my point. It's an almost story because it didn't happen, so it just kind of, like you said, it disappears into the ether. But I'm glad you decided to do the show because an almost story, it's actually an important story. It's like you realize how just by pure chance or luck, because it sounds like this bombing would have been much bigger than previous Bangkok bombings. I mean, this sounds like at least Oklahoma City level or World Trade Center. So It's just incredible that this guy happened to hit a motorbike guy, and then that diverted the whole plot. I mean, Jesus. I mean, that's talk about dodging a bullet.
Our man Boonsern.
That's right.
And the story actually, it had an unresolved ending, but it did have a very Thai response from motorcycle driver Kun Boonsern. He said, "I'm glad I was able to help save many lives. I believe the spirit of the dead driver was also helping me."
There you go. That is undoubtedly a very Thai answer.
Yeah. So you're right, man. That's the story. It's a little bit short and sweet, but it's a fascinating look into what could have happened. It would have decimated.
I never knew it. I'm glad I know this now because it just it just shows. I mean, the stuff that actually happens in life is weird enough, and then you start thinking about the stuff that almost happened, and
God.
and you really start to feel lucky,
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. Interesting story. I love little peeks like that into the unknown history.
For sure.
I guess in hindsight, we're glad that it has remained relatively unknown because the alternate is that everyone knows about it. That's probably not a good thing. That's not what we want.
Right. Agreed.
All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss to decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And this week, Ed, I'm throwing it your way.
Okay, I got a classic example. This is something that you can't love. So the debate here is whether this is something that genuinely annoys you or you have figured out a way to deal with it. And this is, and I feel like it's relatively rare these days that I encounter a website that's aimed at the general public, but it's 100% in Thai with no English button. And so I just like, for example, I was recently buying some electronic stuff. I've been building my own audiophile speakers.
Yeah.
And I found a local shop that carried some of these parts I needed. And I go to the site and it's just 100% in Thai. Like no English option, like no nothing. So I find myself trying to read in my basic Thai and then copy and pasting stuff into Google Translate, and then they want me to register on the site, and it's still 100% Thai, So it's like it doesn't even have the English word like name or address. It's like I have a mixed reaction to this. Like it's not like you can't love it, but do you get pissed? Do you loathe it when you're just like, damn it, why can't they just have like a dual language site? Or do you just feel like, well, I got to deal with it. It's Thailand. Or
Interesting.
What's your reaction?
I am very much a live with on this because for two reasons. One, I think you'll agree with, we're in Thailand. We should be speaking Thai. We should be able to read that website right now. Guilty as charged, I think.
Correct.
Also, I have built multilingual websites, and it is a huge pain in the ass. It is a really difficult, time-consuming thing to do. And if you don't know someone who is able to help you translate fluently between both languages, then it's going to cost a lot of money to hire a translator. It's a mega project.
True that.
So knowing those two things, I'm just very much like, well, what are you going to do? You just have to deal with it.
Well, in all honesty, I loathe it, but intellectually, I know I've got to deal with it.
Right.
So my reaction is a little bit like yours, but I still get really frustrated. In this case, this website is electronic parts. It's like capacitors and resistors, and it's okay. I'm sure 90% of their customers are Thai, but I mean, they still have a website that anyone in the world can access the website, and I don't know how many of their customers are not Thai speakers. It's not only guys like us who don't speak Thai. There's other people in Thailand who don't speak Thai. There's tons of Chinese expats and Indian expats. There's a lot of expats, as listeners will know, and it's just I got to admit, I just tend to loathe these 100% Thai websites. So it's like, I don't know what my answer is. Like, the truth is, I loathe them, but I know that I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't. I know I have no right. I have no right to insist that every website have an English version. I have no right to do that. But I kind of want to. I want to. I want to insist. Like, just give me the English button. Please, give me the English button.
Well, I'll tell you what even pisses me off more, what definitely drives me into loathe, is websites that have an English button, and then you click it, and the only thing on the entire website that turns into English is the menu. Everything else remains in Thai.
Dude, that's actually a fascinating point. You and I can both agree that is a loathe. And listeners, you might not have encountered this depending on, if you've gone to a lot of Thai websites, but it's not rare that when you click the English, it barely translates anything.
Like the menus, that's it. The menu across the top is in English and everything else remains the same.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a pretty minimal.
Bother?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's definitely a loathe. The weak or partial, it's like the 5% translation.
That's right. That's
no doubt. But the bottom line is, I should live with 100% Thai websites. As we pointed out many times, it is our fault that our Thai sucks. But the truth is, I loathe them. That's just
okay.
I'm just keeping it real. Just trying to keep it real.
That's your prerogative.
All right. A final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping in our never-ending quest for cool content. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We are Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, baby. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail through our website that we'll feature on the show. Hit me up on Threads at BKKGreg. See you on the 29th. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you back here next week.
No doubt.
Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink. Skinnamarink.
Wait, isn't that the name of a movie? Like a scary movie?
Yeah, there's a new horror movie called Skinnamarink.
I never heard the word Skinnamarink before, and I don't know anything about the movie other than I heard of it.
You never heard the little thing? Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, Skinnamarink.
Is that some weird Canadian thing? Never heard of it.
I love you. I don't know where it comes from, but
sounds creepy. I'll give it some creepy points.
Well, me saying Skinnamarink-a-dinky-dink, I love you is creepy enough. But man, there's like a whole bunch of movies over the past three years or so that are like indie, small budget, unknown directors that are knocking it out of the park in terms of scaring the crap out of people.
Yes.
I've never seen any of them because I'm a chicken and I don't like scary movies.
Indie horror. No, indie horror is a thing for sure.
Yeah. I'll suck it up one day and watch a few with all the lights on at noon.